All right, gang. Here is lecture one on video. I've never done this before, so bear with me. Um, as I mentioned last class, this is a lecture that I've never given before. It never really occurred to me to give until this box when I started to think what information that I would be sharing with you in class, kind of organically, that I could make into this sort of form. And it occurred to me that I should talk about the room, um, how we curate the room, because we have lots of jobs as directors, and I do believe one of our major jobs is curating the room, creating a safe space in which actors can be vulnerable, um, can be dangerous, um, uh, can do all the things that we admire and respect them for. So, without that room, the product has failed to begin with, in my opinion. Um, so I'm gonna talk about one way that you've heard me talk about create the room from the offset, that other people have put together, and then what I do, what I've reflected on, what I do in my room. So, without further ado, the Chicago Theater Standards. You've heard me talk about these before. I brought them to Lisa, and she instituted them into the UNCA drama department. Moving forward, we will be using them in all productions, which is fantastic. They were first created by the group Not in Our House, and out of Chicago, and you can go onto their website, just Google them to find out more about them. And I've sketched this out before, but just really short. So a number of years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, there's a theater company in Chicago called Profiles Theater, and it was led by an actor, a very well-respected performer in the city, Daryl Cox. And has been known, I think it's changed a little now, but has been known, and this really came from Steppenwolf, as this like gritty, in your face, right there, deeply realistic theater. And Profiles followed in that lineage, and they were well respected for it. Their shows got reviewed very well. They had a school, or classes at least, that were highly thought of, and their actors were highly thought of. For many years, there were whisperings amongst the community that maybe something wasn't quite right, or maybe there were some things that weren't on the up and up. And everybody heard them. I never heard anything specific until this whole thing blew up. But everybody kind of, it felt weird, right? That's why I never took classes there. And eventually, some very, very brave people started stepping forward and telling their stories. And then eventually there was a huge expose in the Chicago Reader about the bad practices. And it's everything from the worst auditions you can possibly imagine to not having actual fight combat, not actual fight choreography, just having fights on stage, to all definitions of harassment. And it blew up, and they were driven out of town, as they should be, and hopefully they'll never be heard from again. What came out of this was Not in Our House, the organization, because there were no standards or rules in the non-equity theater community. And in Chicago, that's the majority, right? There's 250 some odd companies going at any given time in Chicago, and at least 200 of them are non-equity and storefront. And there were no standards. There was no... unless there was a big expose written in a newspaper, nobody was going to be held accountable for it. So they went to work through many drafts, through many people in the community, through many prototypes, through many sessions with lawyers, on a set of standards that went from the very beginning of the process through the very end of the process, and laid out goals, standards that would get those goals, and then ways in which to make sure these standards are upheld within the room. So very, very briefly, and I'm going to attach the standards to this. I'm not saying this recommended reading. You don't have to read it right now. I want you to have it. so that if you find yourself as a director coming into a space in the future and they don't have some sort of system, that you have this and be like, hey, I'd like to use these, which is what I've done. I've instituted them in my company. I brought them to the university. And they could be tweaked based on, Lisa tweaked them a little bit based on academia versus non-equity theater. So it begins with auditions, and we talked about this when we went through our bringing in the audition, whatchamacallit, release. There's a better word. How the audition should or how they should be announced, what the disclosures should be, right? What the transparency should be with the project, pay, all of that. It lays out the things that should be in that audition notice. It talks about how they should be run. It talks about, I think there's like, I think you can only call actors in for 3 callbacks max to get a role, right? Just certain levels of fair play. And then it goes into understudies, and it has standards for understudies, which is hugely important, both understudies and standards for understudies. It talks about health and safety. It talks about the audience contract. And this is especially true in a world of immersive theater, which is deeply creative and yet deeply problematic when it comes to audiences. What's the contract with the audience? What are you allowed to ask of the audience, right? What are you allowed to do to the audience? And then front of house as well. It has a section of front of house because that's very important and is part of the entire organism. And then it gets into the actual rehearsal, right? What should the dressing rooms be like? What do the dressing rooms need to have? And if you've spent any time in dressing rooms in Chicago Storefront Theater, you know how necessary this is. The one that I spent most of my career in, it didn't have a bathroom during the show. You'd have to wait till the end of the show. They ended up having like a camper's toilet, but nobody wanted to use that because then you'd have to empty it. So what need to be in the dressing rooms? What kind of space needs to be given? What kind of privacy needs to be given? And then it has a section on nudity, violence, and movement, right? And this is in talking about what's appropriate in auditions, what's appropriate within rehearsal, who can be in the room during certain rehearsals. The fact that you need qualified people choreographing, right? Not just people who know hand-to-hand stage combat, but people who are qualified, who have been trained, right? Who have certificates, yeah? And now we have intimacy coaches, thank goodness, because the fact that it took so long to get to there is startling now that we have it, but insanely important. And then there's a section on sexual harassment, really defining it to a T, right? Everything from what would seem to be minor in some people's eyes to the obvious transgressions. And then there's a section on diversity, inclusion, and representation, which of course is at the forefront of a lot of theater conversation and has been for a few years now. And so these are all the standards. And like I say, it lays out that they have like, these are the goals of these standards, and then these are the standards we expect you to abide by, right? And then it gives you a tool to uphold these standards, and that's the concern resolution path. And it's a 3-tiered resolution path. I think Lisa added a 4th tier. That should anything happen, you have people to go to, right? So the first tier, I believe, is the person who transgressed. Like if you're comfortable approaching them with the transgression, do that first before anything else. If you're not, go to the second tier. The second tier, I believe, has the stage manager and the director, and then the non-equity captain or the ensemble captain, right? And that's a cast member who's voted on. I like to vote because I generally work with ensembles, or I have recently, that don't know each other as well. So I give them the week, right, of tabling and dream pieces to get to know each other, and then they vote in a closed room, not with me. So that's the second tier, and then the third tier needs to be like artistic director or something like that. In my own case, in my theater company, because I'm the director and the artistic director, and my wife is the co-founder, like there's a lot of in-house, right? So I had to go outside of my own theater company to someone in the theater community who's well respected Steph with Different Strokes, and I asked her, "Can you be in my third tier in this path, so that I have somebody outside the room that people will feel comfortable to go to should anything arise?" So you've got a path, right? You've got people to go to confidentially to try to figure these things out, and then you have a written agreement, which is really a contract, but written agreement sounds better, especially since a lot of times in academia you're not getting any money with this contract, and even in non-equity theater the money is minimal. So it's not really about the money; it's more about what do we expect of the actors. What do we expect as far as arriving on time to rehearsal, as far as conflicts to rehearsal, as far as no conflicts during certain periods like tech, as far as what warrants not going on and understudies going on, that sort of thing. And I think that's super important, so that actors like, oh, this is my job. I mean, so, when I went to Chicago as a young actor, I know I had to memorize my lines, but beyond that, right? I would have loved to have seen it broken down. And then you sign it, and the person who, Lisa in UNCA's case, or me in the American Mid Center's case, signs it, and everybody gets a copy. And then what they also provide is a script for the first rehearsal. And this is how to lay all this out, right? And this has been workshops, through theater companies that I know in Chicago. And it lays out the concern resolution path. It gives everyone a chance to read little bits of the definition of sexual harassment, so that we're super, super clear on what that means. Because the first part of any conversation is knowing the definitions, right? And then it gives the oops, ouch method of dealing with something, with uncomfortable moments and moments of transgression. So it's amazing, and I feel like it takes a lot of onus off the producing entity and the director and the stage manager, because it gives you a path and a guideline and a script in how to present this. And I think every room is better for it, and it is spreading across the country. It is not just in Chicago anymore. It has gone national, and the founders, Lori Myers and Laura Fisher, are now doing panels, and, well, not right now, obviously, but have been doing panel discussions and meetings and other organizations and other states and other academic institutions. So it's spreading. Please spread it. Now you have it, and that's wonderful. So moving on to my room. I have to give credit to the theater company that I was with for all 13 seasons in Chicago, Signal Ensemble Theater. I think the website's gone now. It's just like everything in theater, it's temporary. But I had to give great credit, because that theater company, we created a great room instinctually, and guest artists would come in and be like, "Man, you guys are amazing to work with. It's just so much better than whatever XYZ," and we'd be like, "That's great. We don't know how else do you do this?" And it's only after hearing stories from other rooms in Chicago, hearing stories from other rooms in Asheville, that I realized that we may have been the exception to the rule. So great credit to Signal, and to those wonderful people who I hope to see very soon. I'm actually going to see a Zoom meeting with at least 20 of them on Saturday. So the following is kind of my reflection on what I do in the room to make it the best room it can be. How do I curate the room over the process to do it? So, my room. First day. First days they run almost always the same way for me, and the only exception to that is if designers need to leave early, which happened in Hedda. But this is the way that I like my first day to go. I do the first day address, pretty much right at the top. We do introductions, first day address, because I just want that to be the first thing that they hear. And I've said it before, I'm cognizant that, because as an actor in the room on the first day, especially in a room that you're not very familiar with and people you don't really know, especially if you're the actor who's like, everybody knows each other here but me, it's hard to hear anything. It's hard to listen, especially and you're nervous about what the read's going to be. Maybe they're going to fire you because they realize they totally hired the wrong person. All of those things are going through the actor's mind, and it makes it very hard to focus. So I know I'm going to repeat that first day address and the ideas within it in the coming days, but I do the first day address and then we jump into the read. So we got to get that out of the way with. I tell them that just use this as an opportunity to go on the journey of this play, because we're not going to be able to do this for another few weeks until we get to the stumble through, and it's going to be all chopped up and out of order and all of that. So just use this as an opportunity to really experience the journey. Yeah. Right after that, we take a break, and then design presentations, super important. It's something that I asked for here at UNCA because I didn't experience it the first time I directed. That the designers be in the room and present the world to the actors that they're going to inhabit for a number of different reasons. One, support. It's just great having other artists in the room going, yeah, we're on this journey with you, right? It's also super exciting for the actors to be like, I'm going to wear that. That's amazing. Or, oh my God, that's going to be the set. That's going to be so much fun to play on. Generally, it's costumes and set heavy because lights don't have a lot until later. Same thing with sound, generally, unless they've had some intense conversations with the director. But it's important that they're there. Selfishly, as a director, it's important for me that they hear the play by the actors, because I think that will affect their designing. So presentations, let the designers go after that if they want. They don't need to stay for the rest of it. And then it's stage management time. Part of that is going to be the Chicago Theater Standards, and then of course everything else that the stage manager needs to go over as far as the facility, the producing organization, how they want to run the ship, all of that. And generally that's all the time that we have. If we do have extra time, I get to the next part, but generally that's the first day, and that's a really good first day. And that if that first day ends early, that first day ends early, because most days will not end early. Coffee break. Generally on the second day, although sometimes at the end of the first day, transparency. We talked a little about this, I think it was Michaela last time in class. It's super, I've found it to be super important. And this is actually something teaching undergraduates taught me, is because it's totally necessary for undergraduates, but it's necessary for seasoned actors too. Like, to know what your process is going to be, to know what the expectations are going to be, to know any weird things you're going to throw at them, like my dream pieces. So I tell them, like, this is the process. Generally, we're going to table this week. Yeah. Next week, we're going to get on our feet with our scripts. We're going to go through each scene at least once, if not twice. I tell them about the off-book date. I tell them why there's an off-book date. The fact that we cannot do deeper work after that day unless you're off-book. It's impossible. If you come to rehearsal and you're still on script, you're going home because there's nothing more we can do. We've already spent the last, whatever it was, week and a half with the script in our hand, 2 weeks, with the script in our hand. And we've done everything we can do. So we have to get off book and to really explain to them why these things matter to you. So yes, what to expect, why to expect it. And then this is when I give them the dream pieces as well and say, like, hey, you know, and I explain to them, and I think we've been over this enough, but this is a tool that I use. I just ask you to dive into it, and then I give the instructions, and I always ask if there are any questions, and they always stare at me with blank faces, and off we go. So transparency is super, super, super important. And like Michaela said, like not only what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Here's something that I've realized that I do that nobody ever taught me, but is one of the most important things that I do in the first couple weeks. And that's getting to know your ensemble, or listening hard, right? And this is all listening. This is what you're doing at the same time as you're doing the table work, the dream pieces, the initial blocking. And you're really listening to how each cast member works. Um, because everybody works differently. If you treat an entire cast like one organism, you're just not going to get there. People are going to be lagging behind. People are going to be way in front. You're listening for people who are nervous about their work, and that's inhibiting them. So with those folks, you're really trying to compliment. You're really trying to set at ease. You're really trying to welcome into the room more so than you would normally, right? You're looking for actor habits, right? Does this person pace? Like, can they not settle on the stage, right? Do they need to be given that rooted direction early? And this is when you see an actor habit, or if you think you see an actor habit, and it could be that, it could be something as simple as just being a little bit nervous and being a little bit quiet and not really wanting to get it all out there. If you see these things, don't wait. I've waited. And if you wait to see, maybe it's not an actor habit, maybe it'll just work itself out. And then in week 3, you start giving notes to that habit, you're never going to get there. So I would recommend that if you see something that you think is going to be an issue, whether it's quiet voice, whether it's pacing, whether it's you feel they're a little bit frozen in their upper body, start gently prodding. Right? It's not like, hey, there's an actor habit. You can't talk loud. You should learn how to talk loud. Don't do that because that'll freeze them and freak them out. But just be like, hey, I know you've got the script and we're working on a ton of stuff now, but just know that you're too quiet right now, and we're gonna kind of work on. I'm probably gonna be giving you some volume notes as we work. Yeah, and usually 9 times out of 10, the actor has heard that before and been like, yeah, no, totally. Yeah, please. Right? So, actor habits early. You're looking for actors that are going to need more attention than other actors. Yeah. There are some actors, I'm thinking about one right now, who very early on I realized I don't have to worry about that actor. I want that actor to play. I'm not going to give that actor specific instructions. Even if I have something that's super specific, I'm not going to give it to that actor because them playing is going to be way more exciting. And then I can pick and choose what they do as opposed to me trying to craft something from them that they don't need. Yeah. And then there are other actors who are like, oh, okay. They are not used to coming to rehearsals full of choices. You can tell that actor has been directed to a T. And so you're going to need to craft like just a simple scene of blocking. You're going to need to take it more step by step. And you're listening for that, right? Because the thing you don't want to do is let the actor who doesn't quite know how to create a full blocking performance on their own, like wander all over the stage and be like, oh, maybe we'll craft something out of that. And the other thing you don't want to do is take an actor who's got it, just needs to play, figure some stuff out, and inhibit them, right? So you're listening for those. Problem actors you're also looking for. And I've cast a few, and these are actors that give other actors direction. Passively do it. I had one actor come into a scene. It was like week 2 of rehearsal. She walks in the scene and then she turns to me and she goes, shouldn't she be crying right now? Like, okay, no, yeah, sure, final result, yeah, whatever. We'll get there. Let's just go with where we're at. And you want to shut those down really quick, right? Like, don't give them credence. Don't then there are other actors that are very good who like, do you mind if I have an idea and listen to it? And if it's a good idea, be like, great, that's a fantastic idea. Yeah. If they're very delicate and if they're very humble in their delivery, fine. But really look out for the actors who are going to insert themselves in places where they don't belong and cut that off really early. And if you need to bring them aside, be like, hey, listen, I just need you to focus on yourself, right? I'll focus on the other actors. That's my job, but focus on yourself. Um, uh, and then you're looking for how how much you can push an actor. Yeah, there are some actors that are hardy and that they need to be pushed and egged on and um, they need the motivation of constantly behind them. And then there are other actors who just you need to be gentle with. So all of this is to say that I make a quiet goal in myself that within the first couple of weeks, I can think of every ensemble member and I can go, okay, I know that one has that habit we're going to work on. I need to be gentle. Okay, cool. And I know that one I'm just going to let play. That's going to be totally fine. We'll see if I need to pull back later. And I know this one is I can actually just be blunt with this one. Like this actor totally can take whatever I throw at them. And by the end of the first 2 weeks, I can kind of go through that and do that. Yeah. So listening, deep listening, getting to know your ensemble. Collaboration. We talked about this last time too, right? I mean, we did a whole thing on it, but this part in particular is developing ownership. An actor will know their part deeper and be able to do more beautiful, specific, intricate work if they feel creative ownership over their part. And that's just a fact. So I've done both. I have directed an actor completely as if I played the role, and it was good. It was very good. The actor did exactly what I said. That actor did not live and breathe in that part. That actor, as soon as that actor decided to do this, absolutely happened. I'm thinking one very specific in Chicago a long time ago. Because I didn't allow that actor to experiment within the process, I was just so specific with what the performance had to be, and this was very early on in my directing career, so, making all the mistakes. That actor then finally decided to try the thing that he hadn't tried in rehearsal in performance, and it was, it wasn't very good. The stage manager had come and be like, so-and-so's doing this thing, and it's looking weird, and it was rough. And I know that was actually my fault because that actor wasn't allowed to explore in rehearsal the way that actor should have been. So you got to curate the space to allow for this type of ownership. Now, there are still going to be actors that you need to direct minutely because they're young in their craft, they're hesitant in their craft, or they just need that. But the trick is to not let them know you're doing it. Yeah? With this other actor that I screwed up on, it was very obvious that I was doing it. I've learned that if I have an actor who needs kind of a beat by beat help, that it's trying to do that in a way where the actor still feels at the end of the day that they got there themselves. I know this sounds a little hocus pocusy, but it is really a difference of approach in how you're directing, and really allowing them to and for everything that they find they do break out and they try something, or you see they have an impulse to go somewhere and do something, you grab onto that really hard and be like, hey, you wanted to do something, you want to do that? And then they do that and you're like, yes, do that. Big win, right? And the other part of that is to do it really slowly. You've got at least 4 weeks to help create this performance, to curate the space where this performance can come to life. So don't break it down that first day, the first time through. Like, broadly stroke that thing, right? And then the next time through, get a little more specific, and the next time through, even more specific, so that it doesn't feel like the actor's freedom has been taken away from them all at once. Now, in an ideal world, you're dealing with an actor who you're just kind of responding to, right? They do something, you're like, that was fantastic, do more of that, play more of that, or they do something a little too far and you're like, you know what, that was great, but just bring it back just a little bit. You're at an 8, bring it to a 6. Like, just little things where you're just kind of like ever so slightly molding their performance that they're creating on their own. Like, that's the ideal world. But you're going to get all kinds of actors, hence the listening part from before. Always try something. We've talked about this before, and I know whatever my eyebrows do when I don't think it's going to work. But always try something. Always let the actor try something, because just like that actor who ended up trying something in the performance that was way outside, if they do that in rehearsal, the actor feels it before you even have to say anything usually. But at least you're going to be able to have a conversation about whether that's a strong choice or not a strong choice. And again, their ideas might be better than yours. So, like, be humble. Let them try something. Give them that space. And here's the thing: there isn't one great way to do any one thing. Okay, there are many great ways to do everything. So you may, in your brain, have a great way to execute this particular moment in this scene, and it is great. You know it's great. But the actor might do something else that's great. And you have to be humble enough to recognize that that's great, and then to let go of your great thing. Because if what the actor's done is great, that's theirs. They have ownership over it. They should do that. That's the thing that you should keep. Finally, never write off a small character as just like a story device. That character's just there to move the plot along. There's always opportunity, no matter how small the character. And if you collaborate with that actor in a way that feels like, as they should, they are just as important and as essential to the title character. They're going to give you a deeper performance. You're going to get a deeper story, and you might find things that you never thought you'd find. I think there was one of the books that we were reading that was like, well, if it's just a story, like, just move along the story. Don't. Always treat each character as a human being, and each human being is super complex, and they should be investigated to their fullest. Dream pieces. This is another reason I use dream pieces, because, as I said, we film them, and then I choose little bits and pieces of those dream pieces very often to go into a movement piece within the play, a breakout moment within the play, a transition within the play. And I have heard direct feedback from actors that they were so excited that thing that they thought was so silly that they did in the dream piece ended up to be such a cool part of the play that they really felt like that was their thing. Yeah. And that's insanely important. And that's another really positive thing that comes to me from dream pieces. Okay. Ensemble building, or it's not about you. It's never about you. It's about them. They're the one who everybody's going to watch. Never give up an opportunity. Always be on the lookout for an opportunity. A very small opportunity in Hedda Gabler was once we developed the Libertine breakout piece, which was the one where Loveborg gets up in the spotlight and sings the Beatles song, and they go around the piano and all that. Once we developed that, I realized how fun it was and what a bonding moment it was for everybody to sing that together. And so not only did we needed the reps at it, sure, but it was also great to start out every rehearsal with, because it just immediately got everybody together. And it got everybody to sing together. And there's nothing that builds an ensemble quicker than people singing together. So look for moments like that in your rehearsal, where you can find something where you can stick into the rehearsal that it just kind of does that click. Dream pieces, again, are great for this. Especially as I've developed the dream pieces and how to install them into my process. So the first week I give out all the individual and relationship dream pieces. And I give them time within rehearsal to work on those. And that's through the course of the week. And then generally either the first Saturday or the second Monday, we do a big share day of dream pieces. But what I've learned to do is I start that, and this was really a happy accident, but I start that day by giving the ensemble 15 to 20 minutes to create the ensemble dream piece. And so they've already kind of gotten to know each other a little bit through the dream pieces. They've gotten to know the dream piece process by creating them on their own. So they have an idea of how to go about the work. And then they're thrown into a very tight box of like 20, 25 minutes, which they always ask for 5 minutes more. And the pressurized moment of that builds the ensemble and has created beautiful. They're usually my favorite piece in the entire Share Day, which is surprising in many ways. But you kind of expect it to be a big, you put a bunch of people together who haven't worked together all that much to create this weird thing that nobody's really sure about. It turns out beautifully, and it's a really, really, really nice bonding moment for everybody. Ensemble tabling. This is something that I still try to maneuver, because tabling is also a time where if you're not in scene, you could be working on dream pieces. But I have found that I just need to carve out time in the rehearsal apart from tabling to give to them for dream pieces, whether that's the start of the day or the end of the day. Because to have everybody at the table for that first week, regardless of who's in scene or not, I think is super important. And to be able to make very clear to everybody that even if you're not in scene, I want to hear your thoughts. If you have ideas, I want to hear them. We want everybody's ideas on this table. Like, here's my big idea from the first day address, which I'm going to keep coming back to during tabling. But now I want all the ideas to start coming around that big idea. And to make it very clear from the very beginning, to lay out that foundation of your voice is always important in this room, is super important. And it also is a way, it provides a great opportunity to start getting that deep listening and start getting to know your ensemble as this table work is happening, so that if everybody is there, you can start to get to know everybody. And then for ensemble building, just outside of academia, I'd love to do this inside, but I throw a party right before tech, and not like a kegger, but like I get a bunch of stuff to put on the grill. I like feeding people. Artists generally are very hungry, so they like to be fed. And I place it right before tech, so that we've gone many weeks of being in a very professional environment and working really super hard, and we're about to go into a week and leading up to opening, so a very high stress, pressurized bit, so that if we can have a nice time outside of the confines of rehearsal, get to know each other a little bit better as people, share a drink, share some food, break bread. It's just it's a nice time to do it. And this is something else that I got from Signal. We always used to do this more on the party side, more on the kegger and all that side. But every time I recognized that, like, it made that tech week so much better, because we had stories to tell from that time. We all knew each other a little bit better. We were a little bit closer, all that. Okay, just a couple more things. You've heard me talk about this, efficiency. It is one of my favorite things in the whole world. Being efficient with every minute of the day, which is an enormous challenge right now. I just had to this is the third time I've tried to tape this, and now I'm doing it in a different house, because I just had to have a very long conversation with Matilda about how to use our day, because her screaming came from the other side of our house into my office, and I couldn't tape this anymore. I'm trying to figure out how to be efficient in this world where all of a sudden we're stuck at home, and we still have things that we had to do from the normal world that we used to have in this weird world that we now have. And trying to figure out how to be efficient has been the biggest challenge for me. But efficiency in the rehearsal room. I, at the beginning, would schedule, before I walked into the first rehearsal, every minute of every rehearsal, be like, okay, the scene is 4 pages. I'm going to take 27 minutes, and then I'm going to move on. I mean, like, I had the whole roadmap laid out. But, and that was a lot of that, same reason I pre-blocked, same reason I would direct people completely, is because I was so nervous in my skills as a director that I overcompensated by the work I did beforehand. But I learned very quickly that you just can't schedule like that. You can't schedule based on page numbers because the longest scene could be the easiest one to block, and the shortest scene could be the hardest nut to crack. So what I do is I set goals for each week. First week is tabling, and then I look at a lot of times conflicts dictate this as well, or help dictate this. But I look at the week and I go, okay, by the end of this week, I want to have sketched, rough blocked this much of the play. And this is all dependent on how much rehearsal time you have and how long the play is and all that. But that's what I'd like to get to. So if that's the case, I'm going to kind of lay out, okay, I'll do these scenes, just based on the sense that I have and some best guesses. So I have that. That's almost never how it goes, but at least I have a general outline of like where I need to get to and a kind of plotted journey on how to get there. And then at the end of each night, we see how much we got done, which is usually not everything I wanted to, but everything we needed to. And then you get together with your stage manager and you put together a game plan for tomorrow based on where you want to be and how much you've done. And then you go about through the week like that. So it's really a daily scheduling with a very backup skeletal idea of what the schedule needs to be. And as long as you have that, you will know in rehearsal when to kind of push the envelope with the time and when to just cut it and leave it. So, in other words, don't get stuck. Don't ever get stuck. If you have a scene that you cannot figure out, you have got no momentum on this thing whatsoever, and you have reached the time allotted that you have given yourself on that scene, let it go. Get back to it tomorrow. It needs to breathe. You need to breathe. Let it go. However, if you're on a very difficult scene and you have momentum and you're figuring things out and you've hit your allotted time, keep on going. Just keep on going with that momentum until you feel like you've figured out the bulk of what you need to figure out. So this is all a feel game, right? This is a feel game, but it's being insanely aware of the time in rehearsal, insanely aware of the goals that you have set yourself, and insanely aware of the allotted time that you've given yourself for that day. And if you have that awareness, you're going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. You're not going to let it, like, these, and I've said it before, but like, I've heard stories on a very professional level of shows that have hit tech without being fully blocked. And it just like, I don't care how good your first act is. If your second act isn't blocked until tech, your show is going to be shit. Okay? That's just, it doesn't, like, magic doesn't happen like that. Okay? So as long as you've got those things in your brain and you're conscious of them all the time, you're going to be fine. Finally, efficiency, and this is part of curating the room. So if you're efficient with your time, the actors are going to feel good about the progress of the show. If you're getting towards tech and you haven't blocked the whole show, the actors are going to start freaking out. When the actors start freaking out, the work isn't good anymore. And when the work isn't good anymore, you have even less time. So all getting towards this like bigger idea of curating the room. And finally, within this efficiency thing, is make the best use of your actors' time. Actors aren't getting paid enough to be there at all. So as soon as an actor comes to rehearsal, sits there for 3 hours, and then is let go, you're like, what the, man, like, I could use those 3 hours. We could all use 3 hours more in the day. So be really sensitive. And tell your stage manager this as well. I tell every stage manager, like, I want to be sensitive to the actor's time. So if you see somebody sitting around that I'm not going to get to, that I haven't realized that, let me know. and schedule things in a way that makes the best use of their time, right? Give up the ghost of the sequential rehearsal. Like, I'm going to do scene 1, and scene 2, and scene 3, and scene 4. Like, that really is only necessary on, like, week 3, okay? So in the initial sketching and blocking, sequential order does not. It's not necessary. Conflicts usually will prevent you from doing that, but if they don't, then make sure using your actor's time is the priority over sequential rehearsal. Does that make sense? So, like, if you have an actor that is in scene 1 and scene 5, and you're rehearsing scene 1 through 5 that day, you might want to think about doing scene 1 and scene 5 at the top so you can let that actor go, or do scene 1 and scene 5 at the end so that the actor doesn't have to come until later. All right, now, 2 insanely basic things that I just have to say. One is respect, respect, respect. It's too hard of a business not to have respect for every person in the room. The time commitment is too great. The emotional commitment is too great. The vulnerability commitment is too great. Actors deserve our utmost respect. What they are doing is putting themselves out there for the world to see everything that's inside. And they deserve your respect. I could joke a lot about actors. I was an actor, am an actor. There's lots of things to make fun of. But at the end of the day, it is one of the most admirable professions we have, I believe, in this world, because of how hard it is. So respect your actors. And then the other thing is, and there's no, like, I just did a however long lecture this was about how to curate the room. And I'll say this at the beginning of everything and at the end of everything, all it comes down to is listening. Learn to be an extraordinary listener, and that is a lifelong task, not a short-term task. That is every day of your life. Commit yourself to be an extraordinary listener, and you'll be able to curate a room that creates beautiful art. Okay, there's that. So here's what I'm going to ask you guys. As a response, email me. At least 1, but no more than 3 thoughts on all of this. I just want to see what strikes you. I just want to see what you respond to. Yeah? And at least 1, but no more than 3 questions that have come up through all of this. It can be super specific. It can be situational. It can be crazy general. That's fine. So at least 1, no more than 3 thoughts. At least 1, no more than 3 questions. So this can be a 2-sentence email or a 6-sentence email. That's all I'm asking in response to this. The other things, read Bogart's Terror chapter for Monday. We're going to chat about it in our remote way. Get that play to me today. And then start thinking about fabling that play for next Wednesday. Yeah? The fable will be due a week from today at class time. So the play and the fable and read Terror. Oh, and today during class, I will be available, so if anybody wants to reach out. The Zoom room will be there for us if we need it. And I'm going to look at your dream pieces, and I'm going to respond in the language that I like to talk about them with, just so that you get a sense of. So if we were to all get in the room, if we could all get in the room and share our dream pieces, after each dream piece, I would say, all right, what did we see? What did we hear? How does that relate to the play? How does that relate to the themes? How does that relate to what we're talking about? Oh, that reminded me of the thing that we said at table work. So I'm just going to, it'll be super simple. Probably in an email. I'll just put all my thoughts together and send it off to you guys. Okay, I think that's it. Don't hesitate to reach out. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Elbow bump. Stay sane. Think about that thing we talked about, that project, the painting or the cooking or the baking or the writing, the puzzles. Do all those things. Take a walk outside. And I really look forward to seeing y'all Monday.